Good day, everyone. As you all saw, the MDM went to a buy signal. We've seen a number of leading stocks acting as they should. So we've had a slew of actionable names. Plus the the Chinese market in general has moved dramatically higher over the last few weeks because of its central bank favoring more QE. So it's singing the same tune as all these other central banks. In unison, really, for as much money printing as possible. So rates are going to stay low for longer than expected, and we know that old song and dance with what the markets like to do when they know that the Fed is not going to be touching the trigger on higher rates going forward for quite some time. So yet we see this market that has been very reluctant since December, despite all this QE. And at some point, though, all this money printing, the money's got to go somewhere, and bonds are paying out negative or virtually zero rates of interest, whereas the markets, the U.S. market, the tallest standing midget, has been offering a much better rate of return in general. So a lot of this money, obviously, has been flowing since 2009 into the markets, and every little bit helps. So with the Chinese central bank saying recently that they favor more QE. That bodes great for the Chinese market. It's launched more than 20% in the last 20 trading days. The odds here favor that the market, for the U.S. market anyway, it's calming down, it's getting tighter in the pattern, the leading stocks are doing well, and so the MDM went to a buy signal this morning. Now, in terms of these actionable names, I'm going to show you a few that have done fairly well. I'm going to take the controls from Gil here, and let's start with JetBlue. Okay, so as you all saw, we had a pocket pivot on JetBlue back in a week ago, and so this is, let's see here, switch over, April 2nd. And then we had another pocket pivot just yesterday. And you'll see that, with the weakness in the market, sometimes these pocket pivots undercut a little bit. But right now it looks, with two pocket pivots under its belt, it looks good. Obviously, the airlines have done well because of the price of oil. Oil itself does not look like it has put in a final floor, and neither do commodities, simply because the global market, the global economy is still suffering. And, thus China stepping up and saying, okay, we need more QE, as well as all these other central banks singing the same chorus. So this bodes well for the airlines, continued performance. We also have, let me see here, go to EPAM, it's another one. And that was also, that also triggered a pocket pivot right there the day before, right there the day before it launched. So now it's forming a tight sideways pattern. We'll see what comes of this, but that one is looking good. And then we've had a whole slew of actionable names just recently. I mean, there's Cyber. And this one was on here, the 7th. And the thing about this one is, we've got some questions about, well, it looks a little extended at this level. Now, normally that would be extended. However, it's contextual. So this stock had a gap up here, and then it's rounded out its pattern quite well, bouncing off support. Plus, the markets are shaping up better. And when you take everything into account, and you look at the dramatic earnings and sales on this company, all taken together, it's an actionable pocket pivot. Of course, there's nothing wrong with, if it doesn't suit your risk tolerance levels, you can wait for a retracement. You got a slight one yesterday and today. which makes your risk less. And also notice that the action of the general market is favorable, so that bodes well, obviously, for all sorts of stocks. Now we also got, let me see here, got this one, T-Rex. It's another one that's done well. That had a pocket pivot yesterday, and the industry group is strong on this one. It has the kind of pattern you'd like to see ahead of a pocket pivot. So there's a few of these other ones that have looked quite good. We had two drug makers join the fray. The first one, AKRX, and so yesterday it had the pocket pivot. Obviously, this gap up here is favorable. The gap down is cause for consternation, but overall the pattern is constructive. Notice how it got tight in there on a little handle and then launched from there. Also, you have a gap up here. So there's enough signs of strength in this overall pattern that makes this pocket pivot actionable. We also had another drug maker, M&K, and it's in the same industry group. And this one's having a little bit of trouble right now, but it's okay. The market's had a pullback, so it's pulling back with the markets. It's not really doing anything wrong yet. And then there was actually a third one we did not mention, which is the Mylan, MYL. And the reason being, you can see relative to the overall pattern, it had such a strong move. It finally traded enough volume to qualify for a pocket pivot, but by then, the stock was up many percent. So again, on a risk-reward basis, to us, this posed too much risk to make it an actionable pocket pivot at these high levels. So again, everything's contextual. Now, obviously, it's doing well today, but expect a lot of volatility. And when you look at the overall weekly pattern on this stock, it really has had quite a launch relative to the weekly moves in its name. So some sort of pullback would not be unexpected. If it does pull back in a constructive way, maybe you take a shot at it. That's why I'm mentioning it right now, because it normally would be actionable, certainly if it were if it had registered a pocket pivot earlier on in the price structure. And finally, we've got the old friend, the Chinese retailer VIPS. And this has had a very long move. However, it did have a gap up there, and then another pocket pivot just yesterday. And again, the earnings and sales on this company, if it's to be believed, and I say that because it is a Chinese stock, the earnings and sales are just absolutely soaring on this company. Return on equity 61.3%. It's very impressive fundamentals on this thing, and I would be prone to believe the earnings and sales, all the fundamentals on this, because look at it's had such a huge run over its since it was IPO'd. So I guess the only argument against the stock is that it has had such a massive run. When is the run going to end? But in my studies on many of these types of monster stocks, it's incredibly hard to call a top. It's just because a stock is breaking out of a third or fourth or even fifth stage base doesn't mean the run is over. And sometimes you get these stocks where the final run, the final move off of a very extended base, say the fifth stage base, can be an easy double in a matter of just weeks. So you don't want to just discount a stock just because it looks long in the tooth and has had an incredible run like this one. So yesterday's pocket pivot to us was therefore actionable, and maybe this stock is going to have a final climax run, and you certainly want to be on board if it does. Gil?
Yeah, there's a lot of names that look interesting out there, and that's definitely got to be bode well for the market. The other thing I think probably bodes well, although, I got to say that this market is just kind of just chop and slop, and almost a day trader's market. And it's getting to the point where you just want to say, screw this, throw in the towel. But a lot of times, just when you think that, things will change rapidly and a major trend will develop. And I remember, and I tell this story probably too much, I remember Bill O'Neill on October 23rd, 1999, saying this market is through, it's done, everything's terrible, go short. And then 5 days later, boom, you have a pocket pivot, or not a pocket pivot, what do they call them? Oh, follow-through day. Yeah, that's it. Back in the old days.
I remember that when he was so down, and I remember by that point I had the largest drawdown in my trading career. I was still up over 100% for the year, but I had been up a lot more prior to the grueling months between basically the April top and October. I mean, it was the worst. It was a very choppy, sloppy, brutal market, and I remember talking to other people who were just absolutely demoralized because they didn't have the initial cushion that I had. That first 4 months of 1999 were a godsend, and I had a massive gain playing the internets, but most people didn't have that. So people were demoralized, off at 30 to 50% by October 2009, and I remember Bill just getting so discouraged too. And yeah, lo and behold, a couple days later, the market's off to the races. Yeah. And what's great about the way we handled it is that we were all competitive and we weren't sharing notes or anything, but we were all back on board to the day. So, it was an incredibly competitive environment to trade in, and you had to be on your game to the day, even after suffering fairly substantial drawdowns.
Yeah, that was a brutal time, and I remember just you're fed up. You get to a point where you're just pretty much fed up, and a lot of times that might be at the end. If you look at the S&P, we've gone basically nowhere since December of last year, early December, so we're pretty much flat with that area, maybe a little bit above. But what you're seeing now is another consolidation. Okay, the last time you had a consolidation and you tightened up a little bit, but you're just zigging and zagging, and then it flies out, and it can't sustain the move higher. This is on the S&P. And it rolls over here, and now you're chopping again. But what do you notice this time around? You seem to be getting tighter. And I keep wondering whether we're going to have some sort of a big, upside blow-off because the Fed really is stuck. They don't really know what they're doing. They're just kind of out there trying to act like they do. But they're stuck, and they can't raise interest rates, and who knows what else they'll figure out in terms of pocket pivots. Or I'm sorry, Dr. Is that you moving my... in terms of QE, I don't know why am I fixated on pocket pivots, because I'm seeing so many.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I'm looking at a chart on another screen where there's a pocket pivot signal hitting en route. But anyways, NASDAQ, same thing. It's kind of chopping here now. It's sort of chopping around, but it holds a 50-day, and that's constructive. Volume picks up 4 days ago. Volume picked up yesterday as you moved above the 20-day. So you're trying to come out of this. Now, does this turn into some massive trend? We'll see, but there's some things acting interestingly, and I think, for instance, I'll just give you an idea of things I've been looking at, stuff I've been doing over the past week. First of all, I thought on Monday that the market would get hammered and might make lower lows because the futures were down on the jobs number, and what ended up happening is we just shook out. And as soon as you see everything shake out and turn back to the upside, now I start looking around at my long list and things that are perhaps doing the same thing, so similar types of shakeouts or bounces off of areas of support, whatnot. And you see some things like CyberArk was coming into the 50-day, and I've been talking about this one forever along the 50-day, and you see that every time it comes in, the volume is lighter, pulls in, and then finally it dries up here, and as you come up to the 10-day, I figure that's a buy, and you get a nice 3-day move, gaps up yesterday, which looked a little bit exhaustion-like, so I would tend to sell into something like that on a 3-day move and then look to buy back on the pullback. And that's the way I'll operate in this market, because the best moves seem to come off of these roundabout sort of formations. The other day I was looking at this eyes, and it flashed a pocket pivot, a roundabout pocket pivot right here. And so you buy it right there, and that was on Tuesday. And boom, it's gapping up to 15 the next morning, and you sell that. Yesterday I bought BABA hanging along. It's been looking like it wants to bottom out here let me pull it up on HES Investor software here. Whoops, what's going on here? Oh, I know what's going on. It's making that magic dinging sound, which means you're stupid. You're stupid. That's what it's telling me, because I'm over here trying to open up the program, but there's a dialog box open in it, which I should know about. In any case, let's look at, we got to get rid of the filter. Here we go. In any case, I was looking at it as it comes down along the lows here, and it is starting to tighten up. You were seeing better upside volume. Maybe even call this a pocket pivot here off the 10-day line. But you're below the 50-day, so it's somewhat cautionary. But in this market, you get that sort of a move, and you're off to the races. You know, off of the 10-day line, and especially if it's been rounding out. So you get a pocket. So as you're tightening up in here, you're seeing volume drop. Then you get a pocket pivot yesterday. So you could have seen that earlier in the day and picked up some shares before the close. And then today they gap it up $2, and that is pretty much all she wrote in terms of the gap up this morning. But what I'll do is I'll sell into that, and I'll turn around and buy it back right at the 50-day, and I'm long the stock again from about 85.70 or something like that on the turn on the 620. And so, you know, a lot of this, you're trying to zig and zag with the market and figure out where you're going to get the next cyber type move. And I agree with Dr. K that cyber is probably actionable here, and the way it's hanging in real tight is probably constructive for the stock. So, you know, I think that's positive. Hold on a second. It's actually getting a turn here on the 620. Let's take a look. See the buy signal in here, and so it's on the turn this morning on CyberArk after it opened down, and now it's trying to turn. It's a volatile stock. The other thing I hate about this thing is it's not marginable. So when I buy it, I don't tend to buy a lot of it, because I'll see, you know, I'll buy 2,500 shares and there goes 600,000 of my buying power on the day. So I don't really mess around with that in terms of a heavy size or big position size. And that's acting pretty well. So that's another one I'm playing okay on the BABA. So and then GoPro, I'm watching. This thing's down and dirty, and if we look at the pattern, it's similar to BABA in that you get these three clusters of what are called the bingo indicator, which is basically an oversold indicator. And the other thing I look at when I'm seeing a stock round out a base, and you can see the change in character here. Where you're just zigging and zagging, and now you're just tightening up along the lows, and that can sometimes trigger a roundabout type pocket pivot after you see three of these clusters of oversold bars. And the reason I'll see three of them is this, to me, is also like the rule of three, and you guys know that from prior webinars that I'll also look at things in terms of let's pull up a new chart window and go to a weekly chart. I'll look at these patterns, and if I can figure that maybe you're coming into an area where you might be bottoming, and you've had 1, 2, 3 waves to the downside. I don't know if you want to call this a fourth wave, because the move up isn't that great, but you know, at least 1, 2, 3 waves to the downside, trickling down into the lows of the IPO base, and now you're trying to turn. You're just moving above the 10-week line now. So it sort of coincides with that, and it's also telling me you've got 3 downside waves. So I also see that in BABA. So I would call this one line here as a cluster, and then here's 2 fat lines are a cluster, and these are also clusters. And so once you see that, it's telling me you could be in a position where the thing could bottom. And if that occurs, then you're going to see some kind of a bottom fishing pocket pivot. We saw one already down in here off the 10-day, and now you're seeing this thing come above the 50-day. If it holds above the 50-day, then you're going to have a bottom fishing pocket pivot coming up to the 50-day, because I believe we're already at volume levels. Are we at volume levels high enough for a pocket pivot yet today, Dr. K? Can you tell?
On BABA?
Yeah.
This is looking like it's going to hit. I mean,
yeah. So you're going to get a pocket pivot in this thing today too. So now it's starting to look a little more legitimate. And I was watching, okay, my Schwab trading platform allows me to look at CNBC TV, and I do it sometimes, and, you know, they have some nice-looking people on there, and it keeps me distracted from overtrading or even trying to trade in this market sometimes unless I see the exact right setup. But there's some guy babbling about how VABA is going back to its IPO price. What was the IPO price on that thing, Dr. K, like 44 or something? I don't know.
It was 68, actually. It's very high.
So it was 68, yeah.
68.
So he was saying it's going all the way back to its IPO price. And you know how these things work. It's like everybody loves a thing when it comes public. When it's doing this, everybody's on CNBC telling you that it's going to 200 and you got to own it and blah, blah, blah. Now everybody hates it. But you're seeing it start to turn. That will get me interested in this market. And that's kind of the way that I'll operate. And look for those types of names, and I think you get the best moves out of those types of names, and that's just the way this market works. You start trying to chase something like, you know, you get it, like Twitter was a buy. I thought you pull into the 10-day line here, and the volume's drawing up. It's a voodoo volume signature, and then you get this breakout on a pocket pivot volume signature. Now you're pulling back in. Okay, you don't buy that. You buy here at the 10-day. You see how that just updated in real time? I don't know if you saw that. You have to look at the video of this closer. But you can see the chart change. It updates every couple of minutes. Anyways, now you're pulling back and volume is running lighter. So if we refer over here, let's look at, I'm just going to go to my buy list and take the filter off. And we can look at things drying up. So we're going to flip this around. It's having some issues here. Okay, there we go. And we're going to go to the top, and actually let me do this first. So we go to Twitter. Here's running 29% above average right now. So it's not a voodoo pullback just yet. So you want to watch this. You may have to come down a little further to 10-day, but I think if you're going to buy it, you buy it on weakness. You don't buy it on strength. You don't chase it. You know, you wait for them to come in, and when the market's looking ugly, you keep one eye on those, and you'll notice at the same time that your short sale targets aren't really getting any traction on the downside. I could feel that Monday morning. I was only short Amazon over the weekend because I don't really hold heavy positions overnight in most cases, unless I'm playing guess the gap, like I did this morning, luckily with VABA and Cyber and other names. Tesla also, but I'll get to that. And you're seeing, so we can see here what is drawing up on the downside as they're playing. So Twitter is not. Tesla, I think, is interesting. And, you know, I've called this my short of the year. And, yeah, if I say something like that, you know I'm at least half full of baloney because I don't operate that way. I don't make long-term forecasts. I watch the market and I operate according to what the market shows me, not some overriding belief. So, you know, that's one of the things I've learned over the years and gotten very good at is when the market shows me something, I'm paying attention. And I don't care what I thought an hour ago, a day ago, a week ago, I just go the other way. And you have to do that because if we go back to the example of 1999, you know, Bill O'Neill said that the market was through on October 23rd. And if that's all you heard from Bill O'Neill on October 27th when we had the follow-through day, and it was the beginning of the biggest 2-month run in my career. I went up from like plus 36 to over 1,000 in 2 months, okay? I mean, that's crazy. But let's say all I had heard was Bill O'Neill a few days earlier saying this market's through, and I run around telling everybody, oh, Bill O'Neill says this market's through. I'm not doing anything. Well, that's stupid because Bill O'Neill's turning around and buying on October 27th like the rest of us were, right, Dr. K? And ripping it on the upside, you know, and that's why, because you shift. So you always have to be ready to shift and go with the market. You can't ever operate on a rigid view, and if you do, you're just going to get in trouble. So the other flip side of that, in this market, it's very difficult to operate on the basis of a rigid view, and if you are watching what the market's doing and reacting, you are moving around a lot. Otherwise, if you're not able to move around, you better hope you own something like Skyworks Solutions, which is, you know, these are far and few between, and they're most accurately determined in hindsight. So, you know, it's that type of market, and so you have to operate in sync with the environment and not get locked into any particular point of view. So all that's to say is I'll turn with the market. I'll start looking around for things that are flipping. And what's pulling back? Let's just do this. Go through my buy list, my current buy list. It's always changing. Some names I may just keep on here, not because they're so great, but because they're hanging in there. Now let's look at GoGo. What's GoGo doing? It's pulled back. I thought it, you bought it in here. This is where I liked it, right here. And I bought it here and sold it up into this move here. So probably I was trading it and the pullback back to the 10-day, buy it back and run it up. And it's going up 10% at a time, so over 4 or 5 days. And that's a great name to play on that basis. And then it breaks down. And if you're holding it long and you bought it down here, well, that's another issue. But if you're playing it in size the way I like to play things, then you're flipping around and waiting for it, selling into the strength and then waiting for a proper pullback. And you're not really getting it in here. This is a nice voodoo type pullback here. But let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, I take that back. That was on heavy volume here on this day. Let me see what I can do. Put a crosshair up here. Here we go. Yeah. So that would have been on this day here. Okay. So you're not really going to be buying it. Now what you notice is it undercuts these lows and shifting back and forth, and it's under the 20-day. Now you start to get back above the 20-day. Now you're getting me interested again. And now I can see the thing drying up right in here as it's holding tight along the 10-day moving average. Your volume comparisons are pretty simple. You're only going against, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you got 9 days beyond this. So maybe tomorrow you clear that one out, and then all you have to do is better than average volume. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see this thing turn off the 10, 20-day moving average here and turn higher. Okay, and this is the kind of stuff I'm looking for. I don't react to strength. So, I bought BABA yesterday. They gap it up $2 a day. I blow it out around 86.44, I think it was, or I'm sorry, 87.44, and then I buy it back when it drops into the mid-85s. And that's what I'm doing. And then I'll come back into it here. It's a big, thick stock, and it looks like it might want to try to go higher. And it's giving me a little bit of an edge here so that I can work a larger position size. Somebody's asking about Loco. Loco was a wrap or roundabout pocket pivot 3 days ago, but it's stalled. You can see it's stalled right here. Let's run this up and see what just happened here. Let's blow this up here. So you can see here, whoops, right there is a pocket pivot, but it held above the 50 days, just below the 10-day, but I think if it holds above the 50-day, it's okay. And the market might have been a little bit soft there as well. And now yesterday it comes up, but that's not a roundabout pocket pivot yesterday because there wasn't enough volume to exceed this volume level here of 6 days ago. So, but it's acting okay and it's coming up. And you can see on the same situation here. The only difference here is you're not on the lows. You see there's 3 big bars here, and that was the bottom. So this is a little bit different situation. It didn't really have 3 ways, but you get a cluster of 3 bars here, and that's your low. You could call it, there's 2 clusters maybe if you want to look at it that way. But once it ends the downtrend here. Now it's hanging in nice and tight and moving around. You'll see this sort of signature type activity that's occurring as it's trying to round up the base. And so, when I see this, I thought this was a strong move on earnings. And then it comes in, the volume dries up in here on the pullback. And it's voodoo volume signatures down along the lows, along with these pocket pivot type volume signatures here. This is actually the real pocket pivot. This is a 5-day, which is neither here nor there because it's well above the 10-day, and it's a 5-day. So, but you would like to see a cluster of 5 days, which I think is a positive thing to see. And so, Loco 3 days ago was a roundabout type pocket pivot. So somebody's asking about LBY. I want to go through my buy list. Whoops, LBY, not LT. Whoop, I guess it doesn't like me. Security not found. Why is that? No filter. Do you have the right symbol there? I think you got the wrong symbol there. Can you shoot that one at us again? Anyways, so GoGo looks okay. So now we're just going to flip through this. And these are stocks with volume drying up. Freescale, they're getting bought out by an XPI. Volumes light on the pullback. Here's this Chegg, pulls back to the 10-week line on the weekly chart, the 50-day, just above the 50-day on the daily. Now it's trying to chug its way back higher. Uh, Shake Shack, it's buyable when it comes into the 20-day. Look at that, and you buy it on the pullbacks, and it runs up. Here's Trinet Group, which is kind of doggy. This looks like a big gap down, but notice how it closed at the very peak, and it's been marching higher. And you had a couple of pocket pivots in here. That's what these blue lines are. I think this one is a valid one here off the 10-day, but it came down, tested the 65-day exponential, and now it's turning around. But, you know, as you see these names come in and you watch them pull back in areas of potential support, that's when you have to be looking at them as potentially viable. And that's really what I'm looking for. If I see the indexes turn around and, you know, the NASDAQ coming off the 50-day or turning back above the 50-day on Monday morning, then that's what I'm running around looking for. And you can see most of these things. This one was retesting a low along the 20-day, and then on Monday it closed here and then opened down slightly and then turned around, and you got a pocket pivot signature here as it's coming back up, and now it's trying to go higher. This is a thinner name, trades 273,000. There's NXP. Zeltic is not happening. First Solar just hanging tight, nothing really going on there. This one also, notice how you're pulling in, you're drawing up on the pullback. It breaks off the peak when you had the news from SanDisk that affected the whole semiconductor group, and it's pulling into the 50-day. Kythera, yeah, it's just kind of hanging out. I don't know. That's a thin biotech. Now this is interesting, and I've talked about this one, how it's held the top of the prior breakout, which is here, and you see on the pullback it comes down to the top of that, and it's held, even though you haven't really seen any. You're getting a cluster of 3 5-day pocket pivots here, which looks constructive. So again, 5-day pocket pivots in it, you know, a lone 5-day pocket pivot is not necessarily something to get excited about, but if you start seeing clusters of them, and there's some other pocket pivot action in the base in here, and overall there's not a lot of heavy selling. So you never really see the red bars here getting above the moving average line. So, you know, and you're starting to see these 5-day pocket pivots, and I look at this, could be a short, could be a long, depending on what the market does, and I've been pointing out how it may want to turn, and there it goes. You know, so now it's starting to turn, and maybe it goes higher. Yeah, Taser's up today. I'll get to that. I'll get to questions as soon as I'm able to run through some of these. There's Taser. You know, I've been keeping it on my buy list because you'll see it here every week. But after the breakdown on earnings, it held, and it did go down further. And the stock is gapping up today on that news, you know, that cop shooting the guy in the back. Now, that was pretty egregious, I'd have to say, based on the video. But, you know, we'll let them figure it out in the court case and look at all the evidence. But that one, you know, that's a guy running away from you, and you shoot him in the back 8 times. I don't know. But I don't want to editorialize on that. You're probably not aware of that news, Dr. K. So,
No, I've heard about it. It seems to be quite big.
Yeah, I mean, it gets exaggerated because the bottom line is African Americans are most likely to be shot by another African American by a huge margin. And so it gets a little bit exaggerated. You know, I think whenever there's a shooting like this, it should be investigated, and you don't want to see it happen, but it happens. And, you know, I guess the moral of the story is don't run away from the cops, because whether the cop has a right to shoot you or not doesn't mean he's not going to shoot you. And if you have a basic sense of self-preservation, I think you just do what the policeman says. I don't know. Unfortunately, I haven't developed a criminal mind yet, so I really don't know what's going on in the guy's head when he starts running like that. Anyways, Vivint Solar, this is one of my little cheapy solars. You know, it's another turnaround situation. It's kind of a cup with handle. It looks like it wants to go higher. No pocket pivots yet along the 10-day, but something to watch out for. So, you know, I'd have to say that looks okay. And maybe it's going to go higher. First Solar's moving, and you also notice if you take a look, Solar City is rounding out and trying to go higher. So, you know, the ugly ducklings seem to rule the roost here. Here's the name Wayfair. Somebody mentioned this a while ago, and I put it on my watch list. And I noticed you had a pocket pivot yesterday. They're losing money, but I guess they sell home items or whatever, you know, like, I don't know, knickknacks for the home and furniture, whatnot, to older women, age 65, and of course they're the ones with all the money, so I guess they're doing okay. But you notice you're in a very tight little base here. You had a pocket pivot yesterday. It's pulling in lightly. Looks kind of interesting to me. So earnings come out on June 3rd according to the date here. So I'm watching that one. This is IO Group. I'm keeping an eye on, but it's not really doing anything. Zelti again. I think we went through that. Farm pulling back. It now violated the 50-day. It's working on the 65-day exponential now, but nothing going on. Zetas has rumors of buyouts, but nothing going on there. So let's see. Did I run through my list already? No, something happened. Let's go. Let's do this again. We're just going to hop through all these names that I was already talking about. Not sure how I got. Something happened. Zelti. I think that was the last one. Pay.com. That doesn't want to go anywhere. This Kathero. Tableau we talked about. Variant Systems is hanging along the 10-day. You had a pocket pivot reversal type day here. Massive stuff. Michael's going nowhere. Here's EPAM, had the pocket pivot here, and you can see you're getting a cluster of these beforehand, and it's kind of telling you it's percolating. And I think that's what this indicator is useful. I find 5 and 10-day pocket pivots can be useful, but if you start looking at them in terms of clusters of them, and so you get this nice blue color along the bottom. This is my secret weapon bar chart with group index view that's canned already on HCS Investor Software. There's a whole bunch of stuff on there. There's pocket pivot screens and whatnot. But this is what I look for, and I use this chart view to look for these clusters of pocket pivots. Even if they're 5 or 10 days, that's fine. Hortonworks, talking about that. That had to move up, but pulling into the 50-day, thin little thing. White Wave continuing higher. Don't these guys? They do almond milk, don't they?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I drink a lot of almond milk. I should have figured this one out on the that was a Bible gap up. Should have figured it out. So, oh well. Can't kiss all the babies. CommScope kind of holding tight. They just make telecom towers. MasterCard. Can't figure out whether it's a long or a short. It's trying to act like a long now. It was looking like a short a few days ago. But, that's the nature of this market. Here's SunPower hanging out, going code blue here, and coming up off of the 10-day moving average. I don't know if it's on track for a pocket pivot, but I guess we'll see. There's Tableau again. Wait, what happened? Oh, I know what's happening here. This, when it updates, it shifts things around, and so it'll send me back to the top of the list. FireEye is trying to round out. This had a Bible gap up here, had a nice move. You could sell into that, and now it comes in and trying to set up again along the 20-day. Notice a couple of pocket pivot type moves here. Go back up. Canadian Solar, another solar hanging in there. They're subject to news about tariffs, though, so that's one reason I'm not really a big fan of that one. I prefer the others. Let's see. Ulta Salon Cosmetics is hanging out. Avago just hanging out. Ambarella is just hanging out. That looks okay to me. You had the Bible gap up here, and then it came in just a little bit and undercut. It's a volatile stock, so that looks, viable. And this would have been hard to sit through, I think, but it did hold. Tends to follow the 50-day, not the 10-day. So we can see that's the case, although now it's tightening up along the 10-day, which looks constructive. Let's see, Apple holding along the 50-day moving average, and it's not looking so great. But the other thing working against Apple is that everybody owns it. Everybody thinks it's a sure thing to go higher, and usually, we know what happens when you see that. Here's Eyes. That was the one I was talking about earlier. Here's this Mimetics. You got the gap down, and then the gaps up, and doesn't know what it wants to do, but it's hanging in a cup with handle and holding tight along the 10-day moving average as you're going code blue. My guess is it tries to go higher if the market goes higher. So again, I'm looking through and I'm looking for the types of things I like to buy. I buy voodoo pullbacks. I don't buy strength. I just don't. It gets you off to a bad start in this market, and the key to staying ahead in this market is staying ahead of the market, obviously, but and getting into the market before it really turns based on what the stocks are doing, and being able to extrapolate what you're seeing on the chart during the pullback, because that's the way this market operates. It's an ugly duckling market. We know that the ugly duckling is always ready to rise up out of the great market swamp and take to the skies again, because we've seen it do it time and time again. And over the weekend, things look pretty ugly to me, and I have to admit, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, everything looks so ugly, maybe it's just going to bottom and turn around and go higher. And you know, if you can say that it's all due to the current environment, but again, go back to 1999 and how we all thought, and Bill and Neil thought the market was through at that period in time, and that was the beginning of a big bull market. And so, you know, you think this is a weird market where everything is just funky, and yeah, we've seen it before, but it comes in a different form each time. Here's Facebook holding along the 20-day and the top of the prior base. So here's the top of the prior base. See, it's holding along the top, and you're pulling in, and I believe you are sitting on volume is running 26.2% below average right now. So this thing's just hanging out, and if the market goes higher, yeah, it's going to go higher. So, you know, maybe it's not a fast name, maybe not till earnings come out on the 22nd, which is not too long from now, but 13 days from now, and you get some sort of a pop on that basis. So you got to decide whether you want to play earnings roulette or not. Not my cup of tea, but you know, it's sitting on top of the base, and maybe the pullback is setting up a pop off of that going into earnings or even before earnings. So it's something to watch if you like the stock. I even read a story where Will Danoff of Contrafund, one of our old clients when I was at O'Neill, here's Cyber hanging in there nicely, in Trexon, trying to hold along the 50-day. Remember we talked about it right here, and it had a nice move, and of course when it looks the best, that's when you sell into the move, and it rolls over, and now we're hanging along the 50-day moving average. It's showing some good colors up here, as I like to say. That comes from by the way, from gold mining. If anybody's panned for gold, when you find some placer gold in a pan, they call it finding some colors, or some nice colors in your pan. So I like to see nice colors on my bars turning blue here. GW Pharmaceuticals, the pot stock, the legitimate pot stock, holding along the 10-day on light volume. So, you know, again, here you have something, it had a nice move, pulled back with the market, now it's hanging out. Maybe it's setting up to go higher. It's a possibility. Vasco Data, this is another cybersecurity name. You know, you had Qualys, QLYS, going higher yesterday on a breakout, and some of these are trying to turn. You notice, I don't know if this is updating. I gotta check this. It looks like it is. Is it getting a pocket pivot already? A 5-day probably. So, showing up. Tessera hanging along. I don't know if I trust that one. Acorn, we talked about this one on the pocket pivot alert yesterday, or actually this morning as well, and it's moving higher, and that's acting well. So there we go. We just updated again. You see that happen. Let's see, where are we? Amazon getting pocket pivots 5 days in clusters. I thought this might have been a short, but it's trying to hang in there and turn, believe it or not. So, you know, that's what's happening. Oh, now Apple's turning up, so it just updated. Now it's going to show us everything again. Bluebird Bio is hanging in there pretty good. Cavium also holding along the 10-day. Celgene probably, you know, looking like it's trying to turn, but this is a short earlier along the 50-day, and it came down, but you've undercut all these lows, now you're turning higher. I already looked at these. Yeah, when it updates, it reshuffles the deck, so to speak, and gets me back starting over with some of these. GPN. Hey, Dr. K, is this a viable gap up here on this global payments?
Check it out. Yeah, it had a good earnings report, so gapped up on that basis. Yeah, I mean, when I saw this one, I thought, well, is it really an actionable name? I'm, not all that blown away by the earnings or the sales on this one. It does everything pretty well, but I didn't consider it a true leading stock. It tends to undercut the 50-day. Sometimes it tends to be a slower name. Granted, the earnings are trying to accelerate, and that's causing its price rise. But yeah, I was more 50-50 on this one. It's not going to blow the doors off
Yeah,
anything.
I'm kind of with you on that. Grub, and getting some support. It's probably down to the 10-week line, so I'd be watching that. I don't know what's going on with the stock today. I don't know if there's some news on it, but it had a nice move. If you're buying it here, that's a nice move. Now you're pulling back. Now it may be building a base for the first time since this gap up move. Already looked at a lot of these. Yeah, what's happening is it's updating in real time, and then there's Infinera on a pocket pivot move today, actually. I think I was mentioning that to you earlier. There's Intrexon, JetBlue.
Yeah, I actually put a report on that while you were speaking.
Okay. LinkedIn, maybe it's trying to turn as well. Another situation, kind of like data in that it has, here's the top of the breakout, the base. It was a big ugly cup with handle. It's pulled back, violated the 50-day, and we know about how this can work sometimes. We know about the boomerang type setup where you violate the 50-day, you don't really ever violate the 65-day exponential, and then you turn and go higher. And that'll make you tear your hair out. So that may be setting up as well. Has that look. Very look at that one. I'm going to just rip through these before it updates again. Netflix, okay. Netflix had a pocket pivot yesterday coming up off of the 10-day because it closed right on it more or less, and now you run into resistance at the 50. Now, is that going to turn this thing and send it higher? Maybe it does. So somebody says it won't update the list if I look at it alphabetically. Yeah, that's true. But I'm just going to flip through some other names. Let's look at Lanet. Has acted pretty well. Had a nice shakeout here. Think Grub right now. Maybe it's doing that. But this is really the place to buy. You had a nice move. It's been chopping around since then. But it continues to act okay. And you can't really fault it in terms of how it's acted while the market's trying to correct and slopping around after a big run. So it looks kind of normal. Somebody says Taser got an order for 178 Axon body cameras from City of London, announced this AM. Cool. So everybody buys the stock. I guess that makes sense. Let me see here. What else am I looking at? Cuervo. Jose is having some problems here, but he's all the way down to the 50-day and dropping into this cup with handle base. But there's a great example of a nice move, and then boom, it blows up on you, and now if you're holding it, you're left wondering what the heck to do here. But if you sell into this run, and now you can think about buying along the 50-day, maybe this holds up here. Let's see, do I have Tesla in here? No, I don't. I'm going to go just, we've gone through most of the lists. I don't really have. Oh, Sedge is one to keep an eye on here. Whoops. SolarEdge Technologies, a new IPO, just keeps going higher. You don't often see that. Usually they'll do something, pull back, they'll get hot and pull back. But this one actually has a strong fundamental basis, and I think it's one to keep an eye on once it builds a base. Hasn't done it yet. Silicon Motion, that was a Bible gap up yesterday, and it just continued higher. Starbucks, another one holding along the 10-day line, just real tight, real boring. Sonic Corporation, this was a nice move up and then gives it up real quickly. That's pretty typical for this market. Palo Alto Networks is hanging in there, probably waiting for some kind of pocket pivot move. There's really nothing going on in this one, nothing really constructive, nothing destructive, just kind of flopping around and hanging out. Medivation, hanging along the 10-day. Any questions? So I'm going to go ahead and just open it up now. Let's go. We'll look at all securities now. And I'm going to use this, use HGSI for the questions. Let's see. Regarding Grub, somebody says Goldman Sachs analysts see several potential risks to the company's outlook, including rising customer acquisition costs, restaurant attrition, blah, 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 blah. However, they raised their target for the buy-rated Grubhub from 49 to 51. Stock trading at 43.80, so that, you know, that looks like a buy to me. Okay, go figure. I got to think, though, with Grub, this might become a viable situation. Somebody thought it was a buy off the lows. And let's take a look at our handy-dandy. There's Baba holding along. See how you had the 620 buy here, and now, so you confirmed on the turn, and now it's pulling in. So I think this is going to go back to the highs of the day. We'll see. And just to screw everybody up, it gaps up $2 and then reverses all the way to almost unch. And then it turns around just to screw you up. So, but Grub is trying to make a little turn here off the lows. So, you know, maybe this works. It's tended to be a funky name, and I think you have to have big, you know what's to buy it. And but you know, maybe it's okay in here. Market looks like it's acting okay. It started to pull back, looked a little bit funky. So. Okay, let's get to some questions, more questions here. Fold. What is Fold? Amicus Therapeutics, cheap biotech. It's just hanging along the 10-day. It's going code blue, but you know, I don't know. I don't know enough about this. Or losing money. So, if you think that biotechs are going to get hot again, then maybe you buy some of these if they're pulling back. JD, well, I've talked about this on a number of times, and you get a cluster of pocket pivots here as it's starting to come up off the 10-day. And, you know, I've been talking about this for a few weeks now as setting up, and it's slowly worked its way around, and now it's starting to turn. And you notice here you kind of get 1, 2, 3 separate clusters of bars. Sometimes it can be 3 bars, you know, different combinations, whatever. And that was a low on the third one, and now you start to come back up the other side. So you can see the power of this combination of using some indicators that give you an oversold indication, using these as these bars, the bongo and the force and the kahunas and whatnot, giving you a sense. For me, it's all visual, so you can see it all in the chart, and the clusters of pocket pivots, and all of this stuff is what I'm looking at and what my subconscious, I guess, picks up. And so I could see things start to turn, and since I look at a lot of charts on this chart view, and this is what I use primarily these days. Wanda is kind of a sideline. Although we still use it, I still have it. I'll run screens on it once in a while. But it doesn't really give me what I'm looking for. And this is really where a lot of the power behind my ability to make money in the markets these days comes from. So anyways, Starbucks had a 2-for-1 split. Okay, so stock, wait, it did? Oh, that's why it's down here. Oh, it's cheap now. You got to buy it. You like Starbucks, Dr. K? Do you ever drink their coffee?
Too bitter.
Yeah, it is actually. I don't really ever get it. My daughter loves it though. She's like one of their best customers, I think. I think it's mostly because it's a place that her and her friends can go there and hang out, and they got Wi-Fi, and they're all on their Apple iMac things, Air Max, whatever the heck they're called. Okay, so it's probably just hanging along the 10-day here. Of course, this is going to look all code red because of it hasn't adjusted yet, but that looks interesting. You know, I'm going to Tesla. Okay, getting back to this, you know, I kind of got sidetracked a while ago. But what do you see here? You see 3 distinct clusters of bongos. And, you know, like I said, I like to joke about this being my short of the year. I still think it's wildly overvalued, but who cares? And just show me what it's going to do, and I'll go that way. And all we know is it's been bouncing up into the 50-day, 65-day in here, and it's a short every time, and it worked. But now you get this massive, you see the cluster of pockets forming around here, 5 and 10-day, and you get the big gap up on huge volume here. So I was watching this on, I guess, Tuesday, and it pulls in, and the volume dries up a little bit, and I'm watching it today, and it's acting okay. And as soon as it gives me a 620 buy signal on the on the 5-minute chart, I'm buying it. And the next day I get a nice, 10.8 point gap up. I sell into that. Like 210, 211 got to. And then it comes in a little bit this morning, and I pick it up again. Actually, no, that was yesterday. I picked up some shares. And now it's turning. And these things are where you get the biggest moves in this market. The breakouts, for the most part, you get the glorious breakout, and then it goes nowhere. And that's problematic, and even if it's good for a short-term trade of a few days like Cyber was, but yeah, Cyber's actually looking like it's just setting up to move higher anyways. So I still have a small position in that, but nothing that I can write home about just yet. I wish they'd make it marginable. So, but again, here's a similar sort of concept, and then you get the pocket pivot, and it's a little tighter in here. And if we look at it on a weekly chart, let me see if I can find my weekly chart. This is what it's looking at like on the weekly chart. And you got the 1, 2, call this a third wave down, maybe even a fourth. But, you combine that with the 3 bongo clusters. I don't know why, or bingo clusters, I'm sorry. Is that right? Yeah, bingo. That's Ian over at HGSI. He's, 84 now, still going. He did actually collapse from dehydration, because I think he's type 2 diabetic, and collapsed from dehydration during the HGS investor conference just before I got there. He's probably collapsing because he knew I was coming, but 84, the guy so they sent him to the hospital, but yet the guy's still doing Skype presentations on a screen, on a projector at the conference, because you just can't knock him down. And I admire that in him, but he is 84, and Chris, you've met him over online before. Quite a character, but he calls these bingos, and I don't know why. I would just call them the magic oversold bars. I don't know. So there's got to be something. I have to think about this. Maybe give me some martinis. I'll figure it out. That's how I came up with voodoo. Voodoo. What are other weird names? I mean, you came up with pocket pivot. Did you have any martinis when you came up with that one, Dr. K?
Don't remember. So, yes.
Yes, I knew it. Anyways, but whatever. Voodoo comes from VDU, which is 3 initials of volume dry up, and so, make it colorful. Anyways, but you see what I'm talking about, and maybe this thing's coming out, maybe it's not. But at least if I bought it on the 50-day and I'm working it, and I'm making money in it, then I'm ahead of the game, and I can stay with it and continue working it. And I'll work these things. That's just how I do it. I don't really see a lot of these major trends. It's like the man on the mountain, which I've been tweeting about this morning. We wrote in the first book, we cited Jesse Livermore's, the quote of Jesse Livermore in the book, How to Trade in Stocks, where he talks about the man on the mountain. You remember that, right, Dr. K? The man in the mountain who came down every once in a while to place his orders, and he talked about, a genuine movement, and I just wonder what he would think of this market. Are there any genuine movements, or is there even a genuine market anymore? And I'm not sure.
I think the man on
Go ahead.
The mountains would have been on vacation since 2009, actually, because the markets have been so unusual. And I love that story because it just speaks so much to back in the last 15 years. There's been so many times where the market has not been really worth trading, and when you have traded the markets, when they have been worth trading, you can make a lot in a short amount of time. So I think in the last 15 years, the man coming down to the mountain would have maybe traded 1/5 of the time at most.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Somebody asking if Vivint Solar, these guys are a residential solar outfit too. Man, the bars are small here. I got to change this. Let's go. Whoops. Whoops. Oh wait, what am I doing? Volume, I need to look at the volume. No, that's not what I'm looking for. Here we go. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I know it's here somewhere. Here we go. Let's see if this helps. No, it does not help. It's this bar here. Let's do this. There we go. Now you can kind of see it. And get a pocket pivot here. So you need to clear, let's see, today, this is today, 1, 2, 3. Looks like this volume bar here, which is 1,357,800 shares. So that's what you would need to see there. So let's see. Any other questions? So I think I've gone through a number of names that look interesting. Oh, one other question. I didn't get to this one. Rigel Pharmacy. Well, it's a $3 stock. You know, again, maybe it goes higher. It's highly speculative. I have no idea what's going on with this one in terms of the science behind it. So, anyways, let's see. Any other last questions before we sign off? I mean, see the market's up. Things are kind of flopping around a little bit, but you are getting some upside move in some of these names, and the trick here is obviously going after what you see that's acting, pulling back in a constructive manner. So nothing really obvious that you can just jump on and expect to see run. I think you got to be a little more subtle about things you're buying, so I've tried to cover some of that. Dr. K went through some of his more favorite pocket pivots, but again, you know, I don't think you wouldn't advise people to be chasing strength, right, Dr. K? Would you? I mean, you yourself,
No,
would you just? Yeah, you'd be.
it's not that kind of market at all. And so, you know, as we've been advising, you know, keep your stops tight and take your profits when you have them in context with the chart. You know, if you make enough, say, 6 to 12% gains in enough names, I mean that does add up. You know, and you keep your stops tight enough so that your losses are contained to within, say, you know, 4% or less. You're doing great, and you do enough of those trades. You know, and it's like what you did last year. You know, how else are you going to be up over 100% unless you just repeat that process ad infinitum? You know, it works in this kind of environment very well.
Yeah, and you know, the Skyworks solutions are, yeah, you can look at that and say, oh, you know, the man on the mountain would have held that stock. Well, how do you know? How do you know he wouldn't have been shaken out, or if you ever would have even bought it? The things have been, you know, it's pretty even in terms of its trend, but it does have these dropout days, and you know, that kind of throws you for a loop, I think, if you're long the stock at the time. So, you know, difficult. Somebody asking, is that you, Scott? Are you asking another dumb question, Scotty? Is a new book release date set? No, it's been delayed till next year. Sorry. Of course. Well, if you go to the website, okay, and you go to Amazon.com. Let's see. Can I do that here? Here, I'll go to Amazon.com. Look how hard this is. Just keep me away from the one-click ordering button, otherwise we're in big trouble. And let's type in all short selling with the, here it is, bingo. And we look up here, and it says here, available for pre-order right here. Let me. We'll make it nice and big so everybody can see it. It says available for pre-order. This item will be released on April 27th, 2015. That's only a mere, what, 18 days away from now? You can hardly wait. You're like kids on Christmas Eve, I know, or the day before you start Hanukkah, or whatever holiday you celebrate that elicits that sort of anticipation and excitement. But you'll notice this really hasn't changed, and if you want to know anything about when the book's going to be released, just refer to this page. And it's right there. There you go, Scotty, you got it. Okay, so you're covered. Now, if you see this change, then that means they've changed the release date, at least for now, and we'll see what happens. Anyways, that's all I've got. You pre-ordered the book months ago. Well, if you know you pre-order it and you get, you know, you give up your money, Amazon gets to earn interest on it, I guess, but it's not like it's that much, so, you know, nothing really lost there. But, yeah, that happens when you pre-order in months in advance. You have to wait for it. I've done that, you know, and then all of a sudden you get something in the mail, and it's a big surprise. So, in fact, you guys have seen on my you see on the background there the Funny car, Big John Masmanian, one of my favorite drag racers of all time. I pre-ordered a die-cast model of that car like 6 months ago, and it came in the mail a few days ago. I cannot tell you how excited I was. You will be that excited when you finally get this book in the mail when it comes out after April 27th. Anyways, on that note, I know it wasn't a complaint, Gar. We're just joking around. Don't get all uptight. You know, some people get uptight. They start emailing me that I'm unprofessional and I have no class. I was like, yeah, Dr. K, you already know that I'm unprofessional and have no class. You've known me for a long time, so you already know the animal, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like
no class. Hopefully you have breeding.
hopefully, but you know, it's like, is that news? You know, if somebody gets upset because somebody, it's like, geez, Louise, pull the stick out, lighten up. Anyways, so we're just fooling around, Gar. Don't you know? All right, that's good. He gets it. Anyways, so just watch this, and if this changes, otherwise, you know, if this changes, then the release date's been changed to whatever they show here. But otherwise, I'm looking for it, and I hopefully will be getting some or advanced copies in the mail soon. So it is a paperback, only $39.99 on Kindle, $40.65 in paperback. That is a steal, especially when you got to pay IBD $695 for a short-selling course. I say this is better than that. Anyways, on that note, thanks for showing up, you guys. Good luck in this market. It's crazy. It's difficult, but I'm trying to give you some idea how you want to operate and what I'm looking for. But it does necessitate being open to what the market's telling you in real time and not getting wedded to any particular view. But that's an old theme we've been talking about for months now. So nothing's really changed in that regard. Anything else, Dr. K?
I think we're good over here.
All right, let's shut this baby down. Everybody, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
So long, everyone.